Police are harmful, and police have no business being part of Pride, now or ever. Pride started as a protest against the police, and Pride continues largely because of protesting against the police. Hello to all, happy Sunday, or happy whatever other day of the week it currently is as you're watching this right now. Happy Pride Week if that's up your alley and it's currently going on where you are. I know in Winnipeg it's in the middle of Pride Week right now, so happy Pride to everybody local and celebrating accordingly. Welcome to Dwhell On It. This is a series where I, Taylor, answer your questions about my lived experience as a trans woman. If you have questions of your own, please make sure to add them by comments or by DM, and I'll include them in a grab bag and have them drawn out randomly so they can get answered in a future episode. If you have not yet, please hit subscribe. I've got content that gets uploaded once a week when it comes to the Dwhell On It series, and then I've got other stuff on the side too that gets included whenever I get around to something like that, depending on what it is that needs to get done, of course, obviously. An example of that, I'm still working on a series that I was trying to get done in April, as a matter of fact, and I know time is flying by. It's just lots of hats to currently wear, but that is a series that I'm very excited to get uploaded, and I really hope as many people can see it when that's done. If you enjoy the content, as usual, please hit like. When you hit like, that gives a little bit of a nudge to algorithms to make sure that other individuals with similar interests can see this video and other similar videos from this playlist go into their feed or their homepage, so they can be able to check that out as well too. And also, please make sure to share that these videos can only reach as far as I can reach, so I need you, the viewer, the listener, to help take that message and take it a step farther. Put it on your socials, send it by email, make sure other people are able to see it too, so that we can get them included in the conversation, and even if they have questions of their own to get answered too, and it gives them an opportunity to learn a little bit of lived experience as well. There are two things in the description I would love you to check out as well, ASAFP, and those are two fundraisers that I'm part of. The fundraising is for Run for Women and Walk for Muscular Dystrophy. The Run for Women is supporting women's mental health and women's wellness programs, and Walk for Muscular Dystrophy is helping support Canadians who are experiencing anywhere of up to over 160 neuromuscular disorders, and both campaigns of course help families, significant others when it comes to advocacy and research and so on as well too. I'm trying to reach $1,411 for each one, and the fundraisers are June 5th and June 11th deadlines, which is just over a week away depending on when you're watching this. So as I mentioned, please hop in the description, take a look at those campaigns, make sure to pledge some support. You do get a tax receipt for an online donation as well, and as I mentioned, I'm trying to reach $1,411 for each one, and the deadlines are coming up soon. There's a campaign going on as well that is called Letters for Trans Kids, and what that is a message of support done through social media for trans youth who are currently under attack by constant anti-trans legislation. And with that, I'm going to put a link to my video right here. Please take a moment to visit that. It's about 12 minutes long. First 5 minutes for the kids, last 7 minutes are for the adults. Please take a moment to watch the video and then also add your message too on social media for these youth who really need your support right now too. So hashtag letters, the number 4 trans kids. It's really important, and it means a lot if you can take that time and share a message for trans kids as well. I know I mentioned that I use a grab bag, and typically that's the flow for Dwhell On It, and this time not unlike what feels like multiple times recently, and so for that I do apologize for people who are waiting to have their questions answered. I am going to have this one be a little curated based on circumstances. As I mentioned right out of the gate that it's currently Pride Week in Winnipeg, and we're approaching Pride Month right away, which leads me to want to address a campaign email that I sent out a few days ago addressing Pride, addressing corporations, and how many people have turned Pride and the spirit of Pride into a branded holiday and aren't taking the power of Pride and putting it towards the work that has to get done. A lot of the people who have to do the work are the people coming from a position of privilege, and oftentimes those people from a position of privilege feel that raising a rainbow flag counts as support. It's not. It's better than nothing, but many times it's actually worse than doing nothing. We sent a campaign email out that was titled along the lines of Performative Marketing and Activism Harms to us LGBTQIA+ people. And inside that campaign, which I'm going to include as a link in the description for you to see, I guess we can call it a bit of a recap of a bunch of events that have happened in not terribly distant history of how and where corporations locally have failed, but it's not exclusively a Winnipeg thing. These are absolutely talking points and definitely values of awareness of showing how organizations and communities fail its vulnerable people because it feels that doing good enough should be accepted as fine. And that again is coming from a position of privilege. People who are not harmed don't realize the extent they must go to mitigate harm upon others. They feel that when they stop hearing concerns, their job is done. But one, it's exhausting as an advocate to continue to try to raise awareness and run into walls. And I'm okay with problem solving. I love problem solving. I'm built for that. It gets frustrating when you're talking to people who aren't ignorant. That's teaching and learning. But people who are deliberately aloof or entertain your time feeling like they're doing okay, even though they already have their agenda and their decision, it'd be stuff like, well, I'm going to listen to the stakeholders no matter what is important to you. Just say it. I would rather hear that. Instead of me spending that time passionately explaining how Sport Manitoba is failing, sharing values as to how and why Sport Manitoba is harmful to the community based on its actions versus what it preaches, I would rather have my life back if the reality was they were just going to decide what's best for the stakeholders anyway. The problem is that Sport Manitoba doesn't have the courage to say, we hear you being concerned, you're not a stakeholder, therefore your concerns are invalid. Right? That's when it gets draining, when we get treated like we're dumb, when we get treated like we don't matter. So that is oftentimes when some advocates, some people raising concerns, some people writing to their, whether it's a counselor, whether it's to a senator, whether it's to an MLA or an MP, a mayor or whatever, some people just stop because they're tired of being treated like idiots. They're tired of talking to walls. They're tired of feeling like what is critical for their quality of living is not worth advocating for. And then other times, those calls to action from those same advocates, from those vulnerable people, from those people who are trying to raise concerns and help build a safer, stronger community for vulnerable people, sometimes those conversations and those outreaches stop because they become victims to the concerns they are trying to raise awareness about. And both times, it's not like those people who are in a position of power, those privileged individuals, it's not like they're really fully conscious of what's going on, but they feel like, oh, the concern's not being raised anymore, therefore it must not be a concern. However, their inaction turned it from a cause into a crisis. I had a variety of talking points in this campaign. I'm going to visit them as brief as I can. Since the campaign link is going to be in the description, you can see the details in more detail. I encourage you to please take the time to be curious and explore, because even in the campaign itself are links, which will also be in the description, but the point stands. There are values to understand more about what fails, how, why, where, and what can get done. So that said, started the campaign with a quote from Franklin Leonard. When you are accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. And what that means is that you insist on equality because that's what, whether it's your religion taught you or it's what you feel is supposed to be appropriate or however it may be. In the principle of equality, you're sharing your space. You are allowing space for another person to let them grow. What you're doing is you're sharing your space. When all of a sudden, all of the things you have, right? All of your area, your square footage, your real estate, your worth, your concept of size, your concept of a footprint, your privilege of having all of these things. Coming from a position of privilege, it feels like your space is being taken instead of getting shared. Instead of recognizing your abundance and your ability to gift, you feel like you're getting robbed. And decision makers, and stakeholders, and people who don't have the courage to stand up against bigotry feel like they're getting robbed by vulnerable people who only just want one thing. They want to have a footprint too. And they want to have a footprint they have a right to. Not a footprint that they have been predetermined by people who consider them to be lesser. That's the point of everything. If you agree that people are lesser than you, I don't know why you're here. If you truly believe that people have value, then you must understand your fringe worth, your fringe assets, your fringe footprint, your fringe etc. Are they defining you or are they muting someone else? And if it's the latter, allow that vulnerable individual to have a footprint that they have a right to. Your privilege, however you have acquired it, has been a gift ever since you have had it. And all people from vulnerable communities want, they don't want you to be a lesser human being than who you feel you are. They want to be treated as valuable of a human being as you feel you deserve to be treated. Starting things off would be something that I'm sure people would clearly recognize has always been a passionate value to me ever since I came out. Energy 106 FM in Winnipeg branded itself at one point as being Winnipeg's strongest media LGBTQ plus allies. One of their morning show hosts is an openly gay man. There was a woman on the show who was very much an ally and advocate, all that other good stuff. And Evanov Communications, the parent of Energy 106 FM, hired Dave Wheeler. Dave Wheeler has been fired from a previous radio position because of transphobic comments after being suspended for racist comments. Needless to say, when individuals in Winnipeg found out about the hire, especially many individuals in the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, that was not taken lightly because of how flagrant of a lie that is and how harmful it is. Dave Wheeler compared trans individuals to dogs. To make sure that we're clear, Dave Wheeler did not apologize to the trans community for the transphobic things that he has said. Dave Wheeler said racist comments about Black Lives Matter. Dave Wheeler considered a protest regarding Wet'suwet'en territory to look like an anus. Dave Wheeler has no problem amplifying white nationalist values. Dave Wheeler has had no problem punching down on vulnerable communities for his gain. And Evanov Communications and Energy 106 FM hired him, yet still continue to affirm that they are allies. Before Dave got hired, remember I said that there was a gay man and then there was a wonderful ally to the 2S LGBTQIA+ community? She got fired. So Energy hid behind the shield of a gay man, partnering a bigot with a gay man, saying that, look, we work together, that means we're friends, and that means you guys must be okay with that too. I've spoken at length and have advocated at length about that, and so I'm going to put a link to a long video. It was actually my very first YouTube video. It's right here. Do not expect high quality production, and as I mentioned, it was my very first YouTube video too, and I have changed my look quite a bit since then. Nonetheless, I've spoken at length about that and the hypocrisy of Energy 106 FM. There's going to be a link in the description, at least one link regarding concerns about the harm that got caused by Energy 106 FM hiring a known racist, a known transphobe, yet masquerading as allies to the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. The concern isn't exclusively on Evanov and Energy 106 FM. The concern also goes to the people who have a position of power in our city, in our province, to just allow it. That is what gets to me the most when it comes to our elected officials, when it comes to people who have, some name credibility and so on, to not actively denounce that behavior. Because I acknowledge the legality of it, no questions asked. That doesn't mean that that is welcome into a community. Where were the notable names? Where were, the city councilors to stand up and say, no, we see what you're doing, and this is harmful. This is wrong. We can't tell you to fire anyone, but we can tell everyone else to not model after this organization because this is not in line with the values of our community. We can tell everyone to stop treating people from vulnerable communities as if they're idiots because they see that. And because they don't have the same privilege as you, you know darned well that it is a mountain for them to climb, to overcome and receive justice from your violation. So stop. But none of that happened. When it comes to any major names, you'd have a sprinkle of individuals who just happen to passionately be involved in their community in the first place, which is fantastic. But was it something ongoing? Was it something that became a community concern? No. When it comes to community services, we've got local services in town that are, advocates for the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, mental health community, and so on. I asked many of them to approach something like coalition, to work together, make a statement saying it's things like this that add more to the mix. It's activities like this that our city allows, that our province allows, that our country allows, and feel helpless against. But by allowing doing it that causes more mental health concerns, that causes more crises, that causes more problems. A call for action to these organizations to work together and show in unison that as a support system, while the support is necessary to be available after abuse, it should not be exclusively used after abuse. It makes no sense that abuse must happen first to validate the system, right? No action. The amount of outreach to organizations to speak up and use their platforms, no action. The requests to media to speak up and discuss the consequence that has happened because of Energy 106 FM not denouncing the white nationalism that they enabled. Nothing. Media chose to ignore it because we know that media is all in bed with each other anyway. Journalism's all in bed with each other anyway. It's frustrating, especially since I personally know individuals in media and they won't talk about it because their fear is that, well, what if I lose my job where I'm currently at and I need to get another job? I can't apply there. How self-centered and self-serving can you possibly get by not using your platform to denounce hate because you're afraid of a paycheck not being available? I understand the value of money, and it seems to me like you only respect the value of money. That's a really difficult stance to take, and it's easy to lose respect for any individuals who chose to stand behind that. People moved on. People moved on because they got tired. They got tired of not getting heard, which was the end game of Energy 106 FM. Ride out the storm, ride out the backlash, deal with a couple advertisers that dropped here and there, but as long as they can endure it, and everyone's going to forget about it and move on. I don't forget about it, and I won't forget about it. And this is something that is important to me, and it has been a cornerstone of my advocacy, especially for the fact that because of that, I have been a victim of regular and routine stalking, harassment, abuse, defamation, libel, accusations of being a pedophile, constantly dead-named, threatened. I can go on regularly by a network of individuals who continue to also sing the praise for Energy 106 FM, to sing the praise for Evanoff Communications. My advocacy has led to this violence, and I'm going to continue to advocate to our political leaders, our elected officials, and whatever other platforms necessary to create the change to assure something like this does not happen again to someone else who doesn't have the courage to speak up about it, who doesn't have the endurance to advocate against these things. Energy 106 FM created and amplified harm in R2S LGBTQIA+ community by masquerading as allies. As I mentioned, there's going to be at least one link in the description just regarding that. As I've mentioned, I've gone at length about this topic in the first place, and it's going to be something that I continue to stay passionate about. I very much invite people who would like to help advocate about that with me to reach out because it is an important concern. This is something for people to recognize and not be aloof about. I'm not going to directly use InfoWars, for example, as an analogy, like on its same level, because Dave Wheeler's like a budget Howard Stern from like yesteryear, right? And like budget. But when it comes to something like InfoWars, the conversation that gets broadcast from that amount of hate falls onto the ears of people who hate, and it encourages them, and it gives them a safe space to continue to hate, and it gives them a reason to feel as if they can amplify their hate because they hear it broadcast from someone else. It gives them permission to hate, and especially considering that Energy 106 FM hides behind a gay man as a shield, it blurs that line even more because people who don't understand the difference feel that there's this neutrality happening. Well, he can't be bigoted if he's sitting and working beside someone who's gay. That's not how it works. And if it amounts to anything, being part of a vulnerable community does not automatically make you an angel. And as a matter of fact, people who exploit values of being part of a vulnerable community to leverage their privilege, I don't even know how to finish that thought in a way that I wouldn't need to edit it out. Links in the description, please check them out. The moral of the story for that one is an exact example of an organization literally using the badge of being an ally. They put it upon themselves and then also use it as a smokescreen to amplify white nationalism. How do people accept that? How does anyone become tired of something like like that happening. I understand that people have limits, but how do people accept that as a reality? That is the epitome of bigotry and privilege, creating harm at the expense of vulnerable people while lying to people naive. I'd love to say I can't wrap my head around it, but I understand how business works. And this is a terrible business that nobody should align themselves with because of those practices. On that note, one of our MLAs, Nahanni Fontaine, spoke about the many failures of our current Premier, Heather Stefanson, addressing, among many other things, one of Premier Stefanson's very first radio interviews was with Energy 106 FM. That's not a coincidence. Of all the other radio stations available, why would Heather Stefanson have her first radio interview with one of the lowest ranking radio stations in our city, if not for the fact of knowing that by doing that, she's blowing a dog whistle for the white nationalists and white supremacists who she tries to cater to the most. Even when we were going through that convoy issue a few months ago, Heather Stefanson would not condemn those white nationalists, those white supremacists. So for her first radio interview to be with Dave Wheeler on Energy 106 FM, a known racist and a known transphobe, and off the top of my head, that was either the week before Trans Awareness Week or the week of. I don't feel that was a coincidence. I feel very strongly that Heather Stefanson is dog whistling to bigots and hateful people. And it's no surprise. Elected officials will not satisfy everybody, especially depending on your political ideology and so on and so on. There's no question about that. That said, to fundamentally cause harm by creating a safe space for bigotry, for transphobia, by not only an elected official, by the premier of a province. And anyone in the US right now can certainly empathize with that when it comes to all of the bills being signed off by governors in the states who are actively promoting anti-trans policies or anti-trans rhetoric, which all in principle amplify and encourage trans erasure. Heather Stefanson has contributed to the efforts of trans erasure. Heather Stefanson is a harmful human being. On the topic of harmful human beings, we can discuss Winnipeg Police and RCMP. It's about the aloofness from the police services. I don't think I need to explain to many people at this point in any of our lives how the police service is fascist. I don't think I need to explain in too much detail about how harmful cops are to vulnerable people. I understand fully that there are good human beings employed as police officers. I want to make sure that distinction is clear. That said, that entire system is not designed to help people from vulnerable communities at all. It doesn't matter if it's in Canada or the US. It's sad, it's frustrating, it's angering. Winnipeg Police and RCMP have been mentioned repeatedly, hundreds, if not thousands of times by the same abusers that I deal with. Calls for violence, constant defamation, transphobia, libel, allegations of being a pedophile, and so on. There was a now deleted tweet that I should, off the top of my head, be decapitated and be put on public display. And the Winnipeg Police and RCMP were included in that tweet. And Energy 106 FM. And if Energy 106 FM is that big, strong media ally, you would expect them to be like, stop this, stop supporting us, we do not condone this. But they wouldn't, because they're not allies. You would think that if the Winnipeg Police can go ahead and spend time tweeting a message back because of the criticism of having firearms brought into a school, you'd think if they can create the time to criticize being criticized, they could do that as well, but they wouldn't, because the Winnipeg Police also has members of its force actively promote transphobia on other social media. Considering the stuff that I deal with on a regular, it's not improbable that one of the individuals is a former police officer. When you tell the Winnipeg Police, you would imagine that they would want to look into that, because one of two things: they would like to solve that and keep it on the DL because they don't want news out that one of their former officers is, advocating for violence and transphobia and so on and so on. Or if it's an individual impersonating a police officer, you would think that would be a concern too. On both cases, Winnipeg Police have done nothing. Links are going to be in the description again. I don't want to get too deep into it too. To the point of what I'm talking about when it comes to the police, Winnipeg Police are very likely going to put fun pride badges on, or they're going to promote promote pride in their social medias and be like, we support the queer community and whatever, but they don't. And they won't. And this isn't something that I need to explain. Unless you're a bootlicker, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're a bootlicker, how you feel about the cops isn't really relevant. If you're a bootlicker, you don't understand what the lack of privilege feels like. If you're a bootlicker, you don't understand what being a vulnerable individual who receives violence from police officers is like. I'm going to put a video right here for my Trans Awareness Week video. The very beginning is discussing statistics about how the police in Canada handle violent crimes, especially to people from vulnerable communities, and how often people from vulnerable communities reach out to police officers. Police are harmful, and police have no business being part of Pride, now or ever. Pride started as a protest against the police, and Pride continues largely because of protesting against the police. Well, speaking of Pride, I got a question from an ally in our community who happened to notice something about Pride Winnipeg and wanted to know if I knew more. This was completely off my radar for a few reasons. One of them being I don't follow Pride Winnipeg as an organization, and I've also never participated in Pride as well. Not to take away the value of Pride, I want to underline that, but I struggle with the rainbow capitalism. I don't see results happening from Pride. If anything, I see a watering down of what Pride is supposed to be because people continue to feel that putting a little rainbow on your cheek is lots, or putting a rainbow flag outside your building means you're good. And then as soon as July 1st happens, all of it's gone. Definitely not taking away the value of Pride because people celebrate Pride individually for different reasons in different ways. It is very important for Pride to continue. I just want the corporations and the capitalistic nature of Pride to go away. If you're going to be involved, create solutions, long-term solutions, not allocate 1 month of advertising as for Pride. Turn it into a 12-month venture. Turn it into part of your business model. Don't be proud for a month. Be proud every single time the doors open to your business and prove it. That's the part that frustrates me the most. The politicians, obviously, the platforms, the capitalistic corporate nature of it, I keep a distance from that. I'm not taking away the importance of what Pride Winnipeg does, and I'm not going to talk much more about that because I don't know everything that Pride Winnipeg does. As I mentioned, I don't get involved with Pride. Will I participate in Pride? Maybe, who knows? I don't know. We'll figure out how I feel like on a day that it matters. For all I know, it might just be the introvert thing. What ended up happening, this question that was brought my way, which was very curious, and I made sure to post a tweet about it, which is going to be in the description as well, for people to be curious about. And all I can say is be curious about it. This individual has been a longtime supporter and ally in our community and also with Pride Winnipeg. The Pride Winnipeg Twitter account has been protected for as long as I've known, since at least the middle of 2020. I don't know if they've always been protected, but I've only noticed since I came out. As far as I've known, it's been a relatively inactive account, largely using Facebook and Instagram. But I got asked by this individual, a longtime ally and supporter, why they would now automatically be blocked by Pride Winnipeg. I was especially curious, especially considering it was about a week ago, about a week before the Pride Festival starts. There was a follow-up comment from this individual, another peer in the community, another longtime ally, supporter, member of the community, as a matter of fact, too, well-known name, also blocked. And I mentioned to this individual to start doing a head count about people who are involved with Pride. Find out from those individuals. Start checking to see those individuals who you think might be following the Pride Winnipeg account and who are also actively vocal advocates. For example, people who have called out action against Energy 106 FM. It's really weird for a relatively inactive account to just start blocking people out of nowhere. And what was done even further is that individual has an alternate profile that also follows Pride Winnipeg, but that account is not blocked. And to me, that got very curious. On platforms like Facebook and Instagram, you can curate your comments. You can delete your replies, right? Or you can delete the replies from others, for example. But you can't do that on Twitter. My speculation is that Pride Winnipeg might be up to something. So my call to action to this individual, and also by my tweet, is for people who follow the Pride Winnipeg Twitter account, find out if they are blocked. And if they are blocked, to ask why. Because it feels to me that if there was something nefarious happening that people would not enjoy during Pride Week because of a decision that Pride Winnipeg made, by blocking accounts who they are aware of, who might speak up in case of something like that. By blocking them, that prevents those individuals from advocating to Pride Winnipeg on Twitter and have those replies visible. It's essentially preventative maintenance. It's essentially trying to say it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. So if you're watching this right now and you do follow Pride Winnipeg on your Twitter, check. Find out if you're blocked. And if you are blocked, ask why. Because it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next week or so. If something happened that prompted an inactive account, relatively, to start blocking allies, supporters, and advocates for the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. Another has been about how the Winnipeg Goldeyes continues to partner themselves with Energy 106 FM. In this case, Energy 106 FM being a sponsor for the Goldeyes, but then the Goldeyes are more than happy to promote something like Diversity Day, especially upcoming. I recognize the corporate side of it, and that is often overlooked or not seen, and that's one of the things that frustrates me, because this is part of the reason why corporations continue to get away with this type of nonsense. It is incredibly hypocritical for the Goldeyes to promote diversity while also partner with an organization that supports bigotry, transphobia, and white nationalism. Right? There's a start. When I asked the Goldeyes, how are you still partnering with Energy? Because reasons, they censored me. The Goldeyes have refused to take accountability or even just acknowledge that. And I think that is an incredibly harmful thing for a sports organization to do, especially considering the responsibility that sports has in the community. And for a sports organization to amplify bigotry and give it a home really underlines how harmful that organization is in the community as well. Just like every other talking point, there is going to be a link in the description with at least one link, I guess I should say. It kind of depends on what I feel like putting in when this flow is done. But that said, the Winnipeg Goldeyes are having Diversity Day again, and the Winnipeg Goldeyes are going to take the proceeds from Diversity Day and they're going to donate it to the Rainbow Resource Centre. Rainbow Resource Centre as well is aware of this, as I've written to them. Same with the City of Winnipeg being like, how is this okay? How are you okay accepting money from an organization that accepts bigotry? Because the Rainbow Resource Centre is a charitable organization, do you honestly think that it is charity from the Winnipeg Goldeyes? No. They're taking advantage of this week. They're taking advantage of Pride Week. And they're taking advantage of the naivety of individuals. And they're using it for taxes. The Winnipeg Goldeyes are going to donate however much to Rainbow and get a tax receipt for that. That's what's going to happen. They don't care. This isn't about supporting diversity. This is about milking the community and milking the ignorance and innocence from people who feel like they're doing the right thing. The Winnipeg Goldeyes are exploiting allies of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. No different than how Energy 106 FM exploited the 2S LGBTQIA+ community by acting as if they were allies when they promote bigotry, transphobia, and white nationalism. The Winnipeg Goldeyes and Energy 106 FM, the City of Winnipeg, are functionally harmful. And the fact that Rainbow Resource Centre allows this because they want the money makes them no different. One of the organizations that I reached out to shortly after I came out was Slo-Pitch National. One of the values that Slo-Pitch National presents itself as is an organization that is gender inclusive, because the registration form and all that other fun stuff allows you to have an X on it. They allow non-binary individuals to declare themselves as such. But the rulebooks have zero policy about how to include non-binary individuals. And as a matter of fact, I believe on page 4 of the rulebook, in very, very blatant print at the bottom of the page, specifically says something along the lines of using the pronoun he or him in any situation where a player's gender is not defined. So how is that gender inclusive? Congratulations for putting a box on a registration form but having absolutely nothing behind it to support it in terms of the policies and programming. I've been advocating to SPN about that since I came out, and it is still not changed. Slo-Pitch National is another example of an organization that thinks that by doing something is everything. Slo-Pitch National feels like they have done enough to the community while embracing not even a gender binary, but a very patriarchal and misogynistic system by using he or him for everybody. Slo-Pitch National has a lot of work to do, and I feel that any organization or organizer who runs to Slo-Pitch National as a solution for gender inclusion has a responsibility to look deeper into the practices of that organization, because SPN has not made those changes after being asked repeatedly to look into them. I've even offered to help with that, and they still haven't changed those at all. Speaking of organizations who feel that doing something is everything, even though nothing is what happened, I spoke about this a little while ago, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm losing track of how many times I said I'm gonna put a video here, so I'm gonna put my fingers here awkwardly, seeing that there's gonna be a video for the time that I spent speaking to Winnipeg City Council about the corporate advertising policy. And if that video is not there, it's gonna be in the description down there. It's because I know I can only put up to 5 links, and I need to figure out which 5 I'm gonna use. I spoke to the City Council about the corporate advertising policy because the policy was very weak. I'm not going to spend more time than necessary reiterating everything that I spoke about, because that literally is what's there or here. But that said, this is another example of a corporation, a city, presenting itself as being inclusive, being diverse, being proud, blah blah blah, but not actually putting any effort into assuring the safety and the support for the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. One of the biggest angles about that policy that I had zero comfort with was how they would assert to only do business in terms of in terms of city advertising with reputable organizations. But how do you define reputable? If you're coming from a position of privilege, your definition of reputable is going to be incredibly different than someone who's coming from a vulnerable community, because that person coming from a position of privilege has not been violated from that organization, which is violating vulnerable individuals. Many times a person from a position of privilege, when they are told by someone from a vulnerable community that they have been violated or so on, those privileged individuals do not resonate the importance of addressing that violation. They might think that it's being exaggerated. They might feel like it's being overplayed. They might think that it's not really that big of a deal, just ride it out, and so on and so on and so on. So relying on the word reputable without defining reputation is literally saying, hey, we'll just do business with people who are nice. We'll do business with people who aren't blatantly advocating for hate. Well, duh. Right? Hey, congratulations. Please take a look for that one video there of, a conversation that I had with City Council. I also have included the actual segment that I had with the city. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even get to finish my presentation because I continued to get cut off by the speaker. It was really frustrating in that sense because I needed to develop context for an understanding about the harm that is getting caused by allowing these types of things to happen. But since the speaker felt like I was running my mouth instead of developing context, I continued to get interrupted, which took away from my understanding a lot of power of what I was talking about. Please make sure to take a moment and check that out. And sometimes I don't even get to speak at all, or anything relevant, I guess is a better way to put it. Another link that's going to be either here or in the description, or both, was my segment on CBC and the National's face-to-face when I had a moment with Aaron O'Toole when I was addressing bigotry and transphobia and what what the Conservative Party was planning on doing to address it. Handle it, to mitigate it. I do also want to put another disclaimer in there. That was one of the first videos that I ever used with the software Reaper that I use now. I knew that it was just going to be kind of longer, slower talking, and there was no way that I was going to have it with that many spaces of thought. So I was discovering at that point how to do, audio edits and whatever. So please be mindful just about, audio quality. That literally was my first venture back into something like this since like 1998. One of the things that I walked away from with that entire experience was I got muted, I got diluted between my bio being completely watered down to the language that I wanted to use getting completely negotiated. The words that I wanted to use would have been a little too uncomfortable for Canada to hear. They weren't vulgar words, they're uncomfortable words. There's a difference between the two. And CBC was so concerned about making sure that their couch politicians were happy as opposed to providing a space for someone who's suffering transphobia to discuss transphobia. Weird system, huh? This is another example of how media and journalism is transphobic. Media and journalism is a business, and I've spoken about this so many times, and again, links in the description and probably going to be some other ones and blah blah blah. Since the media is a business, they want to reach out to who's going to provide them money, who's going to give them clicks, who's going to be sensational, and most importantly, who's going to not be an encumbrance, who's going to be the easiest to reach out to, what's the cost benefit, and how do we make sure that we can just continue this with as minimal effort as possible. And so by trying to dilute me, it minimized the controversy that they felt that they were going to have to deal with. By diluting me, they took away my strengths, they took away any credible characteristics about myself, and they tried to present me in a way that was appeasing to all Canadians, instead of just allowing me, a voter, to talk about issues that were important to me, which was the point of the show. So again, it's going to be in the description. This kind of goes back to everything I'm saying about how corporations continue to abuse pride and abuse what they consider allyship and expect people from vulnerable communities, and in this case the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, to just be thankful that something happened. When realistically, the edits that CBC did could have affected the votes. The whole point of this was right before our federal election. CBC's manipulation may or may not have affected votes. That's something that we don't take lightly. I was talking about something incredibly serious on a national stage, and CBC felt it was best to present what they wanted to get heard, not what I had to say. I remember being on the phone with one of the producers of the show when she was trying to get me to negotiate, the things to not say because we don't want to upset any Canadians or whatever. We don't want people calling me ombudsman because of whatever. So I did. Based on the timeline, I wouldn't be surprised that during this week, as of when this video gets uploaded, the review from the ombudsman will finally get posted, because way back when, at the time, he had 27 reviews in front of him. I'm not expecting a review that many people might consider a win, but I want the awareness to get seen, get known, and get understood that the media, who has a responsibility to educate and uplift, chose to manipulate. And what is most amazing was about the topic of transphobia. In the spirit of it, leadership is supposed to empower, uplift, and raise awareness and support and so on women in not only sport, but in community and elsewhere too. The problem with that program is the fact that they used gaslighting language to prop something up in a way that fundamentally was harmful to vulnerable individuals. I'm going to have links in the description, either one there again, I lost count, so if I'm pointing at space, that's on me. Otherwise, it's in the description, clearly listed. Please take a look at it if you have not yet. I am going to start it from the beginning because there is a preamble. There is a little bit of a break because I was offering condolences to a deceased coworker in that one episode, so please take a look in the chapters of that video if you would like to jump ahead past the preamble, but I'll leave that part up to you. Nonetheless, what Bison Transport and Sport Manitoba have done is, again, really flex the fact that corporations can do what they want as they see fit. Myself and other individuals from the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, let alone other vulnerable communities, have addressed about the harm that is caused from poor and inaccurate and gaslighting messaging. Sport Manitoba continued to assert about listening and learning, but then did whatever they want anyway, immediately, even after it was presented repeatedly by individuals saying, you are being harmful, you have to stop this and do better. Please take a look at those links. Please make sure to share all of them. Corporations harm the 2S LGBTQIA+ community while masquerading themselves as allies. And the last and most passionate part, and definitely most recent one too, is Sport Manitoba and their Pathway to Safer Sport, which was recently announced, and it's something that I posted lately. And again, here we go, awkward finger pointing, maybe awkward finger pointing. This one definitely is going to have a video. I definitely want to have a clickable link there. Nonetheless, during the Pathway to Safer Sport memo, media release, call it whatever you want, Sport Manitoba provided a bunch of policies or guidelines when it comes to what they determine as a pathway to safer sport. In that media release, they also presented which of those policies are necessary to receive funding or not. And what that means is that there are important policies that Sport Manitoba is willing to not observe and still provide funding to a PSO, provincial sports organization. And even though I'm talking local, this is an example of stuff about how governing bodies of sports aren't respecting all individuals. Examples of some of those policies or guidelines, say that with my eyes rolling, that get overlooked and still be allowed to be omitted to receive funding: diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I can't remember how they pronounced it, gender identity eligibility criteria or something along those lines. Two policies which are incredibly critical when it comes to inclusion are allowed to be omitted to still receive funding from Sport Manitoba. Sport Manitoba is willing to provide funding to organizations who exercise bigotry, who exercise excluding individuals who just want to play sports. I can go on about other policies. One that really stands out in my head is a whistleblower policy. How are people involved in those sports supposed to feel safe if there's no mandate to assure diversity, equity, inclusion, safety, and so on? How is someone supposed to feel safe when there's no mandate to assure safety? I know I'm speaking brief on it, but again, this is just another example of corporations feeling like doing something is everything, when oftentimes that something is nothing, and many times that something is worse than nothing. This is worse than nothing. Sport Manitoba has literally publicly said in a media release, diversity, equity, and inclusion is not important. Don't worry about it. We're still paying you. They have literally put it on record. Mandating inclusion is the farthest thing from their priorities. But they want to assure no bigotry, no hazing, no abuse, no bullying, no racism, blah, blah, blah. Please and thanks. They put the responsibility on the players, on the coaches, on the staff, on the volunteers. They put the responsibility on all of those individuals to have personal values strong enough to follow things like DEI. It's stunning. I really want you, the viewer, the listener, please take a look at that video as well. And as always, please share. So I'm going to wrap this one up. If you like this content, please hit like. Liking influences the algorithms so that it ensures that other individuals with similar interests are going to be able to see it in our homepage or the feed or the recommended videos or so on and so on and so on. Please share not only this, but every other video that I've recommended as well too. Hit like on all those ones too while we're at it, obviously, please and thank you. But please share, because sharing gets this message to places that I can't reach, and I need you to help me out with that a ton. So please, 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 if you haven't yet, please subscribe. I do upload content once a week at the minimum, so by staying subscribed, you're going to end up seeing any new content as it comes out, and use the notification bell or a little icon thing if that's up your alley too, obviously. In the description, along with many other links in this episode, are going to be those two fundraisers. I am trying to reach $1,411 for each one. One's Run for Women, one's Walk for Muscular Dystrophy. June 5th and June 11th are the event dates, and so that deadline is coming in soon, so please, please, please get in there with a contribution as soon as you can. Remember that any online donation gets a tax receipt as well, and you helping is going to help people who truly need your support. Thank you in advance for your generous donation. In the description as well is going to be a link to the campaign by New Mode, which is a call to action to political leaders, elected officials, and so on, to demand that corporations, organizations, and businesses in their communities are running at an optimal CSR. So, for example, calling energy out for their nonsense as it happened. It takes less than a minute to add your boy's name, email address, postal code, hit send, and it goes to all the elected officials in your area, including the mayors of Winnipeg and Toronto, so please make sure to take a moment and do that. As I mentioned right at the beginning, I am still working on some content. I actually apologize to my guest for that as well, because it's taking me longer than I'd like, but I'm one person wearing a lot of hats, and if you're willing to help out when it comes to any of this advocacy work, there's a call to action for you too. It's really difficult to try to campaign, record, edit, upload, promote this, that, etc., and still try to be a human being at the same time, but I do the best that I can, and I do the best that I can because of the people who don't have any strength to do any of that, and I think that is something that is a focus that more people need to pay attention to, that there are people who are far too vulnerable right now, and I really want that to be taken to heart. Otherwise, I think this is a good time to wrap everything up, so have a great rest of your night. Have a great rest of your week, as I always enjoy saying too, and I will talk to you later.